politics and entertainment. Comedian Marc Maron is with us this morning. Marc, good morning. How are you?
Good, Rob. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, Marc. You know, I've listened to your podcast for a number of years now. I know you've interviewed a lot of heavy hitters in politics and entertainment, but I found it interesting, I think I read this somewhere, that you don't consider yourself necessarily a good interviewer or even an interviewer at all. You consider yourself a conversationalist and a good talker, but you've interviewed President Obama.
Right. Well, I think that interview is sort of an odd job. You know, that implies that you're just going to be sitting there asking questions, which I don't get a lot out of, and I'm not sure that the person you're talking to gets a lot out of it. But if I can engage in conversation, then it feels like something happens that has a little more depth and a little more nuance and just sort of like, well, what about this or what about that?
Yeah.
The president obviously was a little different. I had to do I had to make a list of questions. I'm going to be talking to the president.
Exactly.
And I only got an hour, and I had to do it a little differently, but I think we did get off on a couple of good tangents, and it worked out pretty well.
Was he a little less scripted when you spoke with him? Because, you know, when he's on these formal television interviews, obviously he's got to keep to the script and be pretty tight. Was he a little less scripted with you and more casual?
Oh, absolutely. I think that the idea of that interview, I don't really interview politicians. I don't think I've interviewed any, actually, other than the President of the United States. And I have talked to politicians in my life. I do know how, they can move and how they have sort of a talking point or a point of view on everything. And he's certainly the best of them. He's the president. So I do think that what happened in the garage, it was candid just by virtue of the fact that we had an hour.
Yeah.
There was no one really in there except me and him and one Secret Service guy who I didn't see. Everybody else was outside. So it was impossible for it not to be candid. And it's also audio, which is a lot different experience than sitting there in front of cameras. And I think I did get something very special.
Well, you're back in front of the camera for your comedy special, Marc Maron, more later. It's an hour special. It's the first time you've done something like this in like 20 years. So why are you back up on stage?
I like that. Well, no, I do comedy all the time, but I like how people frame it like, yeah, I was holding off.
He's been retired for 20 years. They dragged him out. Yeah.
No, I did a Netflix special a few years back, and I do a lot of television, but this was really the first kind of premium cable theater special. It was 800, 900 of my fans at the Vic in Chicago, and it was, a little longer than an hour. It's material I'd been working on for like over a year. I wanted to be a real good representation of the comedy I've been doing for the last few years. I've always done comedy, and I never stopped doing comedy, but this is it's my first premium cable special, and it's on Epix.
Well, Marc, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I know you talk about your cats a lot. People always seem to call you neurotic. I know you talk about religions and relationships, but one I wanted to talk about is sex, Skype, or Skyping sex. I know you talk about that. What is that?
You don't know what Skype sex is?
I'm not versed, no. I'd like to learn, though.
I'm going to take your word for that, Rob, and I can keep a secret. But, no, I mean, I don't know how much we could say on live television in Kansas City, and I don't want to ruffle any feathers, but Skype sex is basically when you're on Skype with somebody else, and you get naked, and you do the best you can do. You know what I'm saying, Rob?
Marc Maron, I do, sort of. Yes, no, I definitely do. Listen, Marc, absolute pleasure talking with you.
You brought it up, Rob.
Well, no,
you brought it up.
It's part of your bit, so you're going to be bringing a lot up with your comedy special, I imagine.
Oh,
Marc,
no, it's all in there. It's all in there.
Pleasure talking with you. Hey, happy Hanukkah as well.
Wow, okay, you too, buddy.
See that? All right. Marc Maron, more later, premieres Friday night on Epix. Courtney, over to you.
All right, well, thank you, gentlemen. Coming up, with no regulations on what